now comes like the favorite part of any deal, the 2 to 3 day scramble where, the people that all you're doing is texting your lender, your broker, and your agent for the next 48 hours, right? Like, I think we've all been in the trenches there. So Mark mentioned it was Thursday, August 11th when you guys had that conversation. Offer gets sent August 13th. Talk to us. What does this look like? Walk us through this now.
I think one thing I want to point out, and I looked back at my email when I emailed this over, and my text to Tim was, I was trying to make sure we were positioned as a strong offer. Originally we came in pretty low, I guess, or Tim was disappointed how low we came in. He was sure to tell me that. We came in at like 900,000. Like, I think you ever, as a broker, or you always kind of wait for an offer and then it comes in and you're just like sadly disappointed. Like, he was waiting, thinking like we're good. And then it came in at 900 and he was disappointed. He's very clear on that. But I tried to position the offer of, hey, he's working with an attorney, 𝗵𝘃𝗶𝗵𝗁, that I connected with a couple of years ago, and they've been doing business for a while now. So I got that check. I'm connecting him with my lender, 𝗬𝘃𝗲𝗵𝗁 from Renovo, who, if you Google them up, they're powerhouses in this space. And I think I even gave him Eric's cell phone in the email, saying, feel free to reach out to him or text him if you want to talk to him. I made sure they knew that Echo Home Inspectors was the inspector that was going to be inspecting, and that was somebody that I've been working with for 20 years. Now, it's not like I could dictate what they're going to put on the report or anything like that, but just knowing it's not someone that I've been working with 20 years and he knows I'm in the business, like, it's just a peace of mind. I was trying to show him that we have the team that all works together. We're all comfortable with each other, and we're going to be able to get this to the closing table. So that was one thing. And I did all that work, and he was just pissed because it was 900,000.
All right. So what happens now, though? We come up on the offer. There's other offers on the table. Well, what gets this deal done?
Well, I imagine, Matt, this is probably the disappointing part, because it was for me. It's like, all right, there was nothing for a few days, and then we put in the offer, and then all of a sudden 2 more popped up. Mm-hmm. I don't think we were expecting that. That was a variable, and we, that was Saturday, and then he got back to me on Monday, Tuesday about other offers. We increased the offer. I think we only came up 25,000. I think he was very clear. He told me he's pissed again. He's like, "Come on, man." It wasn't until Tuesday afternoon me and Matt had a couple of kind of heart to heart. Again, I think just justifying the value, the long term, what's going to be like if we don't get this deal, how are we going to feel about that? You have to have all those kind of post-mortem conversations during the kind of negotiations to make sure you're clearly looking down the road at this. And what's this, is $25,000 or $50,000 going to be a big deal in 25 years or whatever it might be. We're kind of trying to forecast out what that looked like for his portfolio. And ultimately we came up to $1 million. And we're still up against 2 other offers. And I was going back and forth, Matt, and it got into the level that I don't like to, where you have to start waiving everything. I think on that Tuesday night was kind of where it all kind of came down. And I put in my notes there, I had 26 phone calls in 46 minutes between 𝗵𝘃𝗶𝗵𝗁, Eric, and Matt, and the listing agent, plus a plethora of texts, right? Mm-hmm. And we're going back and forth. And first it was the appraisal. I'm trying to blank the appraisal waiver.
I think waiver of the appraisal.
Yeah, the waiver of appraisal. So that was something that I've never really. I forced other people to put in deals I'm listing, but I've never really been on the buyer side with that. So I had to kind of, for me, it's just I had to get like comfortable with it as a selling broker. So I called up. Now the reason that came to play was a couple other people came in 25 or 35,000 more than our $1 million offer. Now Tim, the listing agent, knowing, just being seasoned, just kind of, and knows the market, there's a lot of guys that just throw offers out there. And when the appraisal comes back, that's how they try to get it back down. But that's their goal, to get under contract. So, for anybody that's listening, the 𝗵𝘃𝗶𝗵𝗁, maybe you want to explain waiver of appraisal.
So ultimately what that comes down to is you can put a bid in under contract, and usually your standard formal contracts that you have in Illinois that you use the 7.0 or 7.1 contains a mortgage contingency clause that also includes an appraisal. So the lender will go do an appraisal after you're under contract, and customarily you have that time during that mortgage contingency. And if the appraisal comes in lower than what the purchase price was, then the buyer's essentially on the hook for the difference. So for hypothetically, you got $1 million property, you're expecting, you've got your down payment, let's say of $100,000. So you're going to finance 900 and the appraisal comes in way below, let's say 800. So now you're going to have to bring an extra $100,000 to close from the buyer as cash. And, sometimes it depends on the lender too. Most lenders allow that to happen, assuming that there's enough backing from the buyers and they have enough cash to pay for that. But more often than not, if you get a low appraisal amount, you renegotiate with the seller and say, hey, look, it appraised below, and we're going to renegotiate the purchase price back down to the appraisal amount. So if it was supposed to appraise at $1 million, but it appraised at $9 million, let's do that. Or sometimes there's a negotiation, hey, I'll bring a little bit in, maybe split the kitty, purchase price becomes $950. But when you run the risk you run when you waive an appraisal contingency is you can't negotiate and you can't back out of that deal. So, I mean, I hate them too. As an attorney, there's so much risk involved. And Mark, I'm with you on that, is that you get these appraisal contingencies. And what if that appraisal comes in, Matt's expecting to get financing of X amount of dollars. And now he's got to bring almost $200,000 to close that he wasn't expecting to. It can be a problem. But again, then I defer back to you, Mark, and the experts who know the true value of the property. But from a legal standpoint, normally we have an appraisal contingency to prevent that from happening, where the client will be out of pocket.
Now, I think let me interject one real quick, Mark. Sorry.
Yeah, no.
One thing to consider here is just what is your liquidity position, right? Because if you're able to come up with that extra 10% and it's not going to kill you, it's really not all that bad, right? Like you get the deal done, you get the property, you're not paying more. You just have less financing and more equity in the deal. It might change the numbers on the spreadsheet, but at the end of the day, you end up in the same net worth position. But if you don't have that additional, the less liquid you are, the less capital you have, the higher the risk is to you as an individual. Mark, go ahead. Sorry.
I would add to that, Tom, though, the one thing you have to be, if somebody's flipping in that appraisal value and you're not doing the work and you've got this existing appraisal value, you're kind of working with that. And so it kind of, if you're going to be selling to somebody else who's getting financing in a short period of time, you're going to be stuck with
that. Like this is, yes. If this is a short turnaround, you're going to have to deal with this. If it's a short
term, only in that scenario. Yeah, correct.
Now what was, again, I had, was it 46 minutes to get comfortable with it. And I'll be honest, if it's my own deals, I am far less nervous about negotiating things than it is when I represent other people. So like I would
100%. Yeah, you can roll the dice when there's other people involved. You got to be,
I only got to answer myself. Matt could be pissed at me. He's giving me other referrals. He might tell them to go to and leave me alone. Like who knows, like all these things, like I can't do bad for Matt. So, or any of the clients, but I got on the phone with Eric and what Eric did was pretty amazing. I don't know, Eric, you want to kind of, I need Eric to help. I wanted to run it by Eric and see his thoughts on just the concept of entering that in the contract via any feedback. But he helped me be put at ease, and he just kind of jumped in and kind of looked at his values as well too. Eric, kind of talk about that part where I kind of called to look for your advice right in the moment.
Well, one of the things that I think Matt had done well from the buyer standpoint is he had gotten me most everything that I needed in between that time. So I had a pretty clear picture on Matt and on his ability to qualify for the loan. And if it was something that he was comfortable doing, then it didn't bother me at all as a lender in regards to the, if the numbers end up coming in low, like if Matt wants to do this, Matt will still qualify. So yeah, I was fine with it. One of the other things too, and this is just kind of the benefit of using a commercial lender like us versus say a regular conventional lender who has to use an appraisal management company or a lender who has to be blind into the appraisal selection process. I was very comfortable that whatever appraiser we selected, I'd be able to communicate with beforehand and have a pretty clear conversation with them about where we thought the values would come in. And if we were going to be facing any sort of headwinds to the value, to the offer that he'd made, that we'd know early. We wouldn't be surprised, 3 days before closing with it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And I think sorry.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah. I think from my point of view, if everyone's listening at home, it's really just a trust factor. Like, yeah, I could have been as liquid as possible, but I really put a lot of trust in the people that I know and the people I built relationships with. I put a lot of trust in Mark, knowing that he's doing everything he can to not like put us in a bad situation. And he's relying on his relationships as well. So I think that's what's really brought this deal together, is just a bunch of people who work together who just trusted each other in that moment.
100% accurate. Like it's such a good feeling when everything comes together after a few nights of like, geez, what am I doing here? To be clear to the audience, because we're going to talk about a few other contingencies that get waived. Before going there, what's the earnest money in the pot? What are you potentially at loss if things hit the fan here?
I have 25,000. I think was what
I think it was 25 or 30, right?
Yeah.
25. Yeah.
25.
Yep. All right, so there's 25 grand that if you said if this doesn't work out or walk away, like that's what's on the table here. So we waive the appraisal. We also go as is. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Right, so Matt, talk to us about this. Or Mark, one of you guys take us.
I usually just have an easier time not selling, but like make people feel comfortable with it. Cause it's like, you know what, if something crazy is wrong with the property, we're going to, that as is does open up renegotiations to something crazy. Now, what it doesn't open up negotiations to is that 1,000 to, call it, in my mind, I was thinking, I'm like, all right, and maybe we even ran through these numbers on our call that night. It was like, all right, if you got $2,000 in miscellaneous items that aren't perfect that you expect right now per unit, you're at $10,000. And that's kind of what you're going to have to figure out. It'll be kind of part of your cost factor over the next 5 years that we have to fix these random things. So that's kind of those kind of the worst case scenarios I was drawing in mind. But Matt, I'd love to hear kind of what your train of thought.
Yeah, I was very comfortable with as is. Even though we had as is, we were doing an inspection anyway, so I knew what I was looking for. There were a couple little things that popped up, even a little something with the foundation, but we had someone come in and check out. It wasn't a huge deal. And in my mind, I was renovating all these units anyway. So if I had to vary my number by 10, 20%, it was still a phenomenal deal on paper. I didn't think there was going to be anything extraordinarily wrong with the property. So we were both very comfortable doing an as-is deal with this one.
Yep. And BBEC, go ahead and correct me if I'm wrong here, but you got your 5-day attorney review.
Actually,
everything done there.
Well, so I'm looking back at some of my notes and my paperwork. So yeah, you had me working on my birthday, man. I had to do your modification letter.
I'll get you a good present.
But I had a question, Eric. Do you guys remember when the appraisal came back? Generally, I don't know.
Here, let me pull it up.
If you remember, and there's a reason why I'm asking that question, because there's a little bit of strategy behind this. Because as you're looking it up, for most people that invest in Illinois, you're probably familiar that there's an attorney review period. During that period, you can terminate the contract for essentially any reason outside of if it's in this case you have an as-is situation, you can't terminate for an inspection item. But you can, if you're going to debate with the seller, hey, I want you to fix this. The seller doesn't have an obligation to do so, but you can walk because you're getting a property that, hey, I did the inspection. I didn't expect this to pop up. I'm out. That's it. Earnest money goes back to Matt. No money lost. Now, Eric, do you remember when the appraisal came in, or were you?
August 27th.
Nice. Okay. So I think we worked this out. So with the appraisal contingency being waived, I think Matt was extra protected because we could have walked from the deal under the attorney provision.
Yeah, we actually had that. I was in the airport when we had that conversation. That's right. I remember that.
And once we had that, we were in good shape. So, look, it's a good offer. It got you in the door with these sellers, but we had additional contingencies that protected Matt from a legal standpoint, that he had to be able to back out a deal, not lose the $25,000. Now that didn't, obviously everything worked out. So it's good. The appraisal came in. Technically, he couldn't terminate because of the appraisal, but if there was inspection items, and we'll go down the road because there are things that did pop up as we went and got closer to the closing with the property and like the foundation items that you mentioned, but also something that was a little bit not your customary in this one. We had a master association. So this had a condo, and I think it was underwritten as a condo association. And I know, Eric, you emailed because it had multiple PINs or tax ID numbers, and we had to make sure that it was underwritten correctly. And we had the financing done correctly.
Hold on. Listen, being a broker, I'll just start the story with this. When you're doing brokerage deals, I don't know, it's just up and down. Like it's a roller coaster of emotions. And I was so excited. We got it signed and I sent it out to all parties. And I'm like, all right, we're cool, man. Like, this is awesome. We got this deal. And I remember, Eric, it was like 7 a.m. You texted and emailed like, are there 5 pins in this property? Now he didn't say like, this is a problem. He didn't say anything, but I just looked at it and said, oh crap, here we are weeks into this. I never told him it's different parcels. He's not gonna be able to do the loan now. All this was for nothing. Like, so in a matter of like 30 seconds, my mind like flushed the whole deal out of it. I don't even know if I told you this, Matt, but I flushed everything away. I went to the worst place and I just went on with my morning. I'm like, I'll figure this out later this morning. And you kept texting and it ended up being a win because you're like, there's more pins. Like this is good.
It was a huge win. So a couple things about the turnaround time here. Matt signed his letter of intent with us on the 22nd, and we had all 5 appraisals back in by the 27th.
That's amazing.
So we had
going back to having
days.
The appraisal contingency in attorney review. The only way you do that is if you got your act together to the lender ahead of time. That's the only way that works. And then your lender's got to be on top of it, right? Like that's the only way you have a shot of what 𝗑𝗃𝗃 laid out a couple minutes back.
Yeah, and it was done perfectly. You guys did absolutely an awesome job with that. I agree.
But what made that possible is that it was 5 separate pins. So throughout the entirety of all the conversations leading up to you going under contract and signing your letter of intent with us, everybody had been referring to it as a 5 unit, 5 unit, 5 unit, 5 unit, 5 unit. And, I'm sure everyone, at least on this call, is aware. And for the listeners who aren't, 1 through 4 is regular conventional residential type properties. Once you go 5 and above, now it's commercial property, and most everything changes on the lending side. I have to use a different appraiser. My guidelines are different. What we calculate for cash flows are different. So when I either asked or caught wind that it was 5 units, it was a massive relief for me because that meant I could change from commercial appraiser who was going to get this thing back in 3 weeks to my residential guy who got out there, I think the same day or the next day, and then ripped through the reports and got them right back to us. If we're going to get into qualification later too, it made all the difference in qualifying from a cash flow standpoint also. So
that is the danger of text messaging because you just wrote, is this 5 pins? That's it. I looked back at, is this 5 pins? I read, oh my gosh, this is 5 pins. We're never going to be able to get this done for you. Why did you tell me this sooner? Like, that's what
too. I think I was on an email too, because I don't know if you responded back to Eric fast enough because he sends an email and I'm like, yeah, there's not 5 pins. So, but I know that there was an association involved. So I think that changed a lot of things there. So
Eric, quick tactical question. So just to be clear for our listeners out there, Matt's taking out a loan. Is he taking out, a 1 through 4, like almost treating it as a 4 unit and cross collateralizing 4 of those? Or is it 4 individual loans? Or I'm sorry, 5 individual loans, 1 for each parcel. Like what was the actual breakdown here?
It's one loan. It's one loan crossed amongst all 5.
Got it. But you did them all almost individually and then cross collateralized them as like 5 residentials, or no? I'm not following.
No, we did one loan, and all 5 pins are part of that one loan, and all 5 units are effectively cross collateralized on one loan.
Yep.
So, technically he could sell them off one at a time if he'd like, but they're all part of the same loan. So we're getting really deep in the weeds here, but but
that's how he got the 1 to 4 financing. That's my question. Okay.
No, it's still commercial financing, but we looked at it like we were financing a portfolio of single family homes, not a 5 unit building. So because it was 5 separate pins, it is 5 separate properties all on one loan, as opposed to one 5 unit building.
So a portfolio loan really versus.
Yep.
Yeah. It was a portfolio loan.
Okay. Makes sense. All right. So we have good news there. Renovo comes back with the appraisal very quick. Next step is we have an inspection. You guys have alluded to that we had a foundation issue, had a couple things that weren't planned in there. Matt, talk us through this.
And nothing too crazy. Echo was phenomenal. Those guys were awesome. Walked the entire property. There was a little bit of a foundation, some horizontal cracking in the basement of a couple units that was concerning. So brought out, Mark recommended someone for foundation issues, had him come out, and he said, simple $4,000 fix, which, I mean, sounds like a lot of money to some, but in the grand scheme of this deal, it wasn't very much. So it wasn't a deal killer. So inspection came back surprisingly clean outside of that little hiccup. So the inspection made me more excited about the property than I was before.
Okay. 𝗵𝗃, while we're going through attorney review, any of the other items, such as tax proration or things that probably aren't the biggest hitters, but sometimes they can be the squeaky wheel. Anything else to add to it?
When it comes to investment properties, you got two things here, and it doesn't always play out this way. This one, it does, because one, we had to make sure that we had all the condo docs. There was a master condo association that covered this property. So there are assessments, association fees. We needed to follow the 22.1, get all of those disclosures, get reserve studies, et cetera. Add on to that we need to get the leases. And now this being in Batavia, a lot of people, listeners, are probably familiar with Chicago and maybe even the outlying suburbs. You got all of these things that you have to start worrying about. Me as an attorney, I'm almost sweating. Security deposits. What's going on with the rent? Do we have a written lease? Do we have, what's the rent roll? What's the situation with these tenants? Is one of them not performing? And do we have to worry about an eviction? And so those are the things that we're doing during attorney review. Those are the things that we're requesting. Their attorney was good. He was, turning over the paperwork pretty quickly. Nothing came up on the leases. I mean, it's a little bit different in this jurisdiction versus what I would have expected to see in a property in city of Chicago or in the outlying suburbs, nearby suburbs, because of the rules and regulations. So we had a little bit of leeway with that. And, Matt looked over the numbers and everything was fine with him. And I think they had contact. And you can, Mark, did you guys have contact with the tenants individually? I don't remember this.
Ironically, we still struggle with that. It's, the building, what is, they're all 5 units have some sort of student athletes that are roommates. So it's like you text a tenant and then all of a sudden the parent calls you back. So it's it's
a borderline frat house.
Yeah, it is. It's a borderline frat house. It's all sports, both female and male. I think softballs, most of them. But so it's communicating with the tenants has been a pain in the butt from day one. But long term, obviously, he's going to turn those into more luxury type stuff. So,
yeah. So, and during attorney review, we went through all the things that, nothing popped up in the paperwork that was crazy. And I think, looking at my paperwork, we did close the attorney review, I think, finally on September 7th. So we had this big leeway. I think we issued our letter on August 24th. And in the time that it took for them to give us our due diligence, I call them due diligence items, your tenant leases, your finances, other things are utility bills, and figuring out how the utilities are paid. And, Matt can make an estimate and, who pays the utility. Sometimes the tenant does, sometimes the owner does. So all of those things were the things that were hashed out during attorney review. And then after we went through it, the numbers looked good, everything looked fine. So we were good to close up attorney review. And so, for most people, that's when that $25,000 really becomes essentially non-refundable, barring some other outstanding mortgage issues. But in this scenario, essentially the earnest money went hard at that point. And then we were ready to rock and roll after that for in terms of getting to the closing. And I think it went back to Eric's lap to just get the final clear to close.